So welcome back to the channel, guys, and as you've probably seen in the thumbnail, we've got ourselves a 1994 Suzuki 1100 sports bike. So this is quite a retro beast. It looks pretty good. It's got the lucky stripe graphics on it, and it's been sat in a garage for at least 10 years or more. So what I'll do now is I'll show you some shots of around the bike. You can get an idea of the condition of it, and then what we're planning on doing is stripping it down, getting it running, and then we can look to put it in for an MOT and see what else we need to do to get this thing back on the road. So as you can see, we've got ourselves plenty of dust and dirt and grime, some old leaves and bits and pieces. So the bike itself has only done about 19,000 miles, and I've got some old MOTs and bits and pieces to back that up. So some interesting repair there. Got a Yoshimura can on there as well. It's really hard to push this bike around because the tyres are flat, so not looking forward to that bit. But yeah, as you can see, plenty of dirt and grime on there. So yeah, we'll look at getting it cleaned up. We're only going to clean it up lightly at the moment, as I say, because we want to just get the bike running, get those tyres sorted, and get it sort of as ready as we can for an MOT, and then just sort of put it in and see what happens. So there you have it. So what we're going to look at doing now, guys, is taking the seats off, the main seat and the pillion seat, and then we will take off some of these panels, whip the tank off. We can drain the fuel out of the tank if there's any left in there. Then we can start taking the carbs and stuff off and start taking those apart and cleaning them, so that hopefully we can have a look at that and a few more bits and pieces, and then look at what else we might need to get the bike running. So with that, we'll get started. So we've just got two 10mm bolts that hold the back of the tank on here. So just get those undone. So just pop those off. And to undo the seat, it's just a case of popping the key in the back here, turning the key, and it's just got a little clasp that holds that in. So pop the keys back in there. So we just take those rubber washers off as well, out of the way. Just got some Allen key bolts here. We've got a 3 and a 4. Held on there. going to undo the same on the other side as well, so it's just the 2 Allen key club screws here. Just get those undone. Okay, so we've just got another little 10mm bolt at the top here. Just giving that all a little bit of a wiggle, because we've got a fuel tap on this tank. So it's just making sure we can get the fuel tap out of the way. So we just tap that up like that. And we've got, certainly smells of old fuel. So under here we've just got a few pipes for the fuel. Just leave that in place. Just pop the tank out of the way, and we've just got 2 10mm bolts up on the top here, and these just hold the top of these plastic covers on, fairings, sorry. So we've got one there, and then get those out of the way. So just grab the camera quick, just show you where we're at. So the carbs are just in down here, so we're going to take this pipe off. We'll probably take the ignition coil out of the way as well, various other bits and pieces. I think this is the airbox, so we'll get this all out of the way. That hopefully should free that up and get all of this big plastic bit out of the way, because you can see the carbs are just down in here. So we can look at getting on with that now. This pipe here just pulls out. Air filter housing and the air filter itself. just pull those off as well, so it's just all out of the way. Makes it easy to access stuff. Probably want to take these fairing side pieces off as well, so we can just slide the carbs out from here. So there's just a little clip that holds that part of the fairing on, so I'll clip that back in there. Look at unscrewing all this lot. So I'm just undoing the bottom fairing bolt here. That one don't want to come out. So I've just taken the ignition coil off here and just popped it up there. I'm just going to pop around this side and see if I can undo some of the Jubilee clips that hold the airbox onto the carb. I think to get them out, what we might end up doing is taking these little rubber trumpets off here, undoing this side, and then maybe just pulling them out to one side maybe. Just to see if we can put those out. Just to give you an idea, just popping a screwdriver into these rubber bits here, just to see if they pop out at all. So before I go too much further, I've just popped the old battery, or an old battery back in there. It doesn't quite fit, so I've just put a screwdriver in place just to hold the battery from dropping right in. I'm just going to pop this off out of the way here, the back seat, that's just held on with 2 screws there. So I'll just take that out of the way because I want to have a quick check of the fuses. Just going to look at popping this panel off, but on the other side here, so I just need to undo these. And then there's a couple of screws there because it just looks like there's some fuses down here as well. I might want to check. So I've done a little bit of digging around now, and I've managed to just basically use the voltmeter and the power probe just to check that the emergency or the fuel, basically the engine cut-off switch is working, so that's functioning properly. I've been around and checked all the fuses. My phone did go flat unfortunately, but I managed to, I think I might have caught it in the video, but I managed to get the ignition lights and stuff back on. And I've just been doing a little bit of fiddling around, and it turns out in order for me to turn the engine over, or for the bike to try and start, the clutch has got to be, it's got to be in neutral, and then the clutch has got to be in. So I've got it in neutral now. I've got the clutch where you can pull it in and out, so that's fine. So there's obviously a safety cut off on the clutch there. So now we've got it to try and turn over. It sounds like the bike wants to turn over, so that's fine. So we can potentially look at putting in some easy start and see if we can get it to run, and then after that we can see if we put a bit of fresh fuel in it, how well it runs. Just before we go and take the carbs off, if potentially we don't need to, it may well be that they didn't have fuel in them when the bike was parked up. It's unlikely, but we can try it and go from there. So we know that it turns over, so we'll just grab some easy start. throttle cable back in just in case. We just swapped out for a bit of brake cleaner, so we'll give that a try and see if that does the same thing. So we've now got the tank off the bike, and as you can see, we've got the fuel tap underneath here. So from what I understand, you've got one fuel pipe. Let me just reposition that. So you've got one fuel pipe here, and then you've got two, what I believe are vacuum pipes. So when the bike is running, it uses the vacuum of the engine to draw the diaphragm from this open and allow the fuel through. So you've got three settings on the tap itself, which you use I would guess you call it like a fuel key to move. And basically you've got a prime function, a reserve fuel function, and on. So on is for when you've got enough fuel in the bike. Reserve is when you're starting to run low. You put it into that. And then for prime, I believe that's when you want to get the bike started and you haven't got the vacuum from the engine there. So I'd actually move this into the prime setting just so that I could try and run the bike. I put it back on, and lo and behold, it was pouring fuel out of here. So I did have a quick look online at these fuel taps, YouTube of all places, and it does seem that these are quite well known for sort of being unreliable and just leaking in general. So we've got ourselves a rebuild kit. These are fairly inexpensive. You can get them online or local motorcycle dealership. So I managed to grab one of those. Unfortunately, you can't actually get the fuel tap for this anymore. They don't make it. So we're going to look at rebuilding it just to see enough if we can get it running. And then I will look at getting another fuel filter for it because it's not actually in this kit. So with that being said, I'll move the camera aside so I can get in there and start stripping this down. And then we can look at what we need to do to get that sorted. Plenty of gunk and dirt in there. So we've got a seal on the top here, and then a seal here, and then we've got this whole piece that sort of pulls out like that with a spring in there. So those we'll just put to one side there like that, and then we could just lay them out and we know what order they went in. As I say, we'll need to give all this a good clean because there's quite a lot of dirt and stuff in there. We've got a new seal for this at the top as well, and we've also got a seal for this here. So I've undone that screw on that side and that screw on that side, and then we'll just have to look at how that comes out. I think we'll just have to see if we can get maybe a pick behind this seal, pull this seal out, or if there's a way that we can push it through from the other side, or just work it out using a pair of pliers here. So we might be able to do something. So I've just popped this in the vise, and I've been working on this. And I've managed to just work this free and loose, and now that's just open that up. You can see where the small spring is there, where the seal is there as well. So I need to give all that a real good clean, because where you can see in there is absolutely full of dirt and grime. So we'll get all that cleaned out, and then we can look at reassembling it all. So we've given all of this a reasonably good clean. We haven't got an ultrasonic cleaner, unfortunately. That would have been quite good to have pop this into, but we've just used some carb cleaner and cleaned all of that out. I have managed to get the seal out as well, which sits in here, which the replacement is that one. So what I did is I just used the world's smallest pair of pliers, and just basically work my way round, just using the top of here on there just to pull that out. So what we can look at doing now is fitting the new seal and getting all of this fitted back up so that we can look at popping it back into the tank. So we'll get on with that next, get that sorted. So that's those on there. We've replaced the sealing bits and pieces in here as well. And we've made sure we've given it all a bit of a clean inside and out. Made sure that that's okay. So we can now pop this back on, and I've left it in the prime position as well. It's just a screw that pops in just down there and holds that on. So that's all that in place. And then what I will do is I'm just going to shine a torch down here and just check when I turn this that it moves all the internals, and then I can just look at popping that back on the tank. So that, just with those mounting bolts there and there as we saw in the beginning. So now I'm just reconnecting the fuel line and then those two vacuum lines as well. That's that one on. So that one has a clip that holds it on, and then these two vacuum ones, they just push on and in place like so. We just need to tuck that fuel tap in under here. Then the same with the tank vent pipe as well. That just gets tucked in. I think we'll worry about that one a bit later. Come down here for the minute. So I've now popped the tank back on. I've just put that on loosely here, and what I did off camera as well is I've just put a battery on there as well. So you probably saw when I was doing the fuel tap the box for the battery, so we've got a new battery for it. So it's now just a case of turning it over and seeing if it will fire. We may need to introduce some easy start or some starter fluid to see if that might help, but yeah, we'll turn it over and see what happens. So we've got ignition on. We are in neutral, so that's okay. Ho ho ho! She's running! Ho ho ho! Oh, yes! Ha 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 ha! Oh, that's brilliant. So we've had a good start so far. Trying to get this sort of side fairing off here. The bolt here was just spinning. The captive sleeve inside the frame there was just spinning, so the bolt itself was just turning. So what I've done is just drilled the Allen key head through the centre, and then put a slightly bigger drill bit through just this part, just to break this off here. So that's now off, so I can take that out of the way. And then what I will look at doing is probably getting that captive sleeve out and then just replacing that with another one. I've got some of those, so that's not a problem. And just tidy this up. And then we can get this fairing off, get that out of the way, and then that'll give us access to the side of the engine there. So just tuck this out of the way for the moment. Right, we just had a little sweep up, get that stuff out of the way. The fairing on the other side is already out, so that's not a problem. I took that off in the first video when I was accessing some of the bits down there. So yeah, we'll need to take this exhaust off at some point as well. So it may well be that we do that and then we can access these bits down here that bit easier. I'm not desperately in need of draining the oil just yet, but we can get all the coolant out because that's a nice easy access point there. May well be as well that we could always drain the oil out of one of these oil cooler pipes, but yeah, we'll see how we get on. There's multiple places we can continue on with, so we'll look at doing that now. Just looking at draining the coolant out, so just pop the rad cap off the top, just loosen that up. Try not to make too much of a mess. Just pop that there for any fluid, excess fluid. So we've got a few 10mm bolts up here that hold the top of the rad in, and looks like potentially a bracket here as well which holds the top of the oil cooler. So I might take those two out, and then that gives me loads of nice access to the front there. Disconnect the fans, so I'll grab the bits and pieces I need to get those out next. Got a little nut and bolt combination for the bottom of the rad here, which holds the oil cooler on. So just gently take the oil cooler away from the rad there, and then we've got the horn which is also attached to the rad housing, so I'll just pop that off and out the way as well. So now if we're careful, we should just be able to tuck this out the way. That's it. Just need to try and untuck the wiring, which is stuck up in the head there. There we go. Just be careful as well of the front mud guard. I will take that off in a second, I think, just to avoid any damage to it. So the fan there does look a bit like it's got something in it, or it's got really hot and started to melt up a bit. Doesn't look great. So I've just grabbed a pick set, and what I'm going to look at doing is just unclipping these plastic tags here so that I can pull the wiring out. If you just take your time with these, it just means that hopefully then they won't get damaged. So you should just be able to press them in and then unwind them like so. And that way they stay there. This bit of trim can come off, or the air duct, which just runs from the front fairing there into the engine area, just to cool that down. There's just a Phillips screw for this one. On the other side there is a 10mm bolt holding this on, so there's a bit of a mix match, so hopefully I'll look at sorting that out so they're both the same. Bit of a wiggle, there we go. Now I'll just pop that screw back in the mounting bracket so I don't misplace that. Now just going to loosen these oil cooler lines. Probably would have made more sense to have done this when the rab was in place, so there's not so much movement, but we're there now. So we've just got two. These shouldn't be tight, yeah, these are really nice and loose anyway, so it's just going to make getting that exhaust manifold off that bit easier. I'm just going to do the same the other side before I take that bit off. Oil looks nice and clean from what came out of that pipe anyway. Looking at this, this is just sealed with a couple of O-rings. There's just a O-ring starting to pop out, not a gasket there, so that's not a problem. We've got plenty of O-rings that we'll be able to pop back in there. Again, what I'll do, just screw these back in. The same around the other side. Somebody's just put a Phillips screw in there, so I should be able to get that out. Putting the nut back on there. There's the oil cooler. As I said, you just got some rubber O-rings on there which have just been left on there, so we'll pop that on the side, out the way. So the next thing I'm going to work on, we've got all of these manifold bolts here. So I'll just look at getting those out. So they are just a 5 or a 6mm Allen key, so I'll loosen those off, wind those out, and then that should allow us to drop this manifold section down. Looks as if it's welded right the way through to the tailpipe or the end can, so we will look at undoing the bracket for that as well, but the main thing is we get this bit done first, then we'll work our way around there, hopefully drop it all down and pull it through in one go. Yeah. Perfect, that's all of those out. So we whip round to the other side, have a look at the end can, see what we need to do there. So if I just tuck myself in here, we've got just a nut and a large Allen key there, which looks to hold the end can on, so we'll look at taking that off. What I did do as well is I moved the oil drainer, because I thought if this manifold starts to drop down, I really don't want it to come crashing down onto the oil drainer and either damage it or spray oil everywhere. So that's now down on the ramp there. What I'm going to do now is just basically get the exhaust manifold and the end can and go that way, underneath the bike that way, and then just pull the whole lot back in one go. Right, so what I will do is just bag these bolts up and then just lay that down or tie that to the exhaust manifold itself. So again, they don't go missing. We'll just have a clear up quickly before we go on to the next bit. So just take this bracket out the way here. So that gives us a bit more room to work with. That's got a bolt missing out of it as well, so we can look at putting that back in. So now that I've got all that exhaust out the way, had a quick clear up, I can get to the sump bung all that much easier. May well have got to it anyway, but if we're going to take the engine out, we might as well make use of having a bit better access. Yeah, oil looks really pretty clean, which is good. Just a 10mm bolt there, and then we'll just wind it out. Nice and gently with that. Pop that back into there. Just having a quick look as well at some of the wiring connectors. I will come down and do a bit up the top here and hopefully get some good footage of that for you so you can see what's going on there. But yeah, we'll just try and unclip some of this wiring and stuff like that while we're waiting for that oil to drain out. So we've just got some more of those plastic clips. And what I do is I just undo them out of the multiple wires and then put them back on one wire roughly in that location. And then that way I know where it came from. It just makes it a bit easier. So again, we just unfold some of these little tags that hold the wiring, that tuck it up behind here. So we can get that wiring out, and I believe that is the one that goes down to the stand. It's just got a stand safety switch in there, so you don't ride off with the stand down. Yeah, we can give all of this a good clean as well, because there's plenty of grease and dirt here from the chain. And then I'll probably take all this cover off as well, just again while we're waiting for that oil to drain out. Give it plenty of time to drain right out there. And then I will put a new sump bung copper washer on and do it up. It's probably best to do that now rather than just put it in hand tight and forget. I'd rather not be in that position, so we'll look at swapping that washer out now and getting that tightened up. Yeah, having a look round, it looks fairly clean. It's, you know, there's nothing, no real obvious damage other than just some road dirt and bits and pieces that we can give a real good clean off once we've got it all out. So this is just all accessing the sprocket guard, or accessing the sprocket should I say. This is the guard for it. There we go. Oh, mystery bolt. Probably not ideal being there. So I've just got 2 Phillips screws there that I'll undo, and then I'll put all those bolts back in this, and that just releases that clutch cylinder there. No, I don't know that they're going to come undone easily, so I might need a little impact bit for those. So I'm going to tuck that up there for the minute, just out the way. Move some of this stuff out the way. We'll put that sump bung back in. So I've just swapped out the sump bung washer with another one, so I can pop that back in now that that's all drained out. That's it. I'm just going to move that out of the way before I whack it out the way. Just nip that up. Give it a bit of a wipe off. As I said, we will clean it all later, but I'm just trying to not get everything else dirty where possible. What I'm going to do as well while I'm here is just retrieve this shoelace. I'm assuming that was put there to stop somebody smacking their shin on it when they walk past it, but we don't need that at the minute. I'll say that and now I'll probably end up smacking my shin on it. Right, that's a keeper. I think the next thing I'm going to do is just unplug the stand switch, which looks to be like that one there, and then a little bullet connector there. And then again we've got some more of these cable ties. So we just thread that through. like so, and just work our way down past that hose. So I've just flicked that out the way there. And that's out the way. Hopefully we won't damage that. So we just tie that up. Something like that. Just stops us risking damaging any of that. So again, we got some more cabling as well coming down here, which is just all in behind this panel here. So what I might do is look at taking the battery out, taking this panel out and just making access again much easier. Sometimes it's better to take more of these bits and pieces off so that you don't struggle so much trying to get access to some of this stuff. So we're just working our way along, unplugging more of these ties. Just give us a bit more flex as well on the wiring. That goes up there. Okay, so I've just put a camera in a different angle, so hopefully you can see that and look at what I'm doing up the top here. So we've got plenty of connections and bits and pieces to take off. I'm just going to start by disconnecting a cable tie which was holding that clutch lever shut, just so that's now no longer going to be in the way. So we can just start by unplugging some of these little push connectors. Just loosening those off, getting them out of the way. That was the one for the radiator fan. I'm also going to look at taking this air ducting out of the way on this side, the same as we did the other side. Just pull that back and then should just be able to wiggle that out the way. There we go. I'm just going to pop the bolt for that back in where it came from. So it's just a coolant temperature sensor there. I've got another wiring plug that goes up to the ignition barrel, so we'll take that out of the way. Let's start looking to pop some of these vacuum pipes off in a moment, I think. Get the ignition coil off, get that out of the way. I'm just going to take a quick photo of the orientation of those as well, so I've got that for memory. Just a quick snap of them. There's a little bracket tucked down here which holds, just looks as if it holds the part of the water housing here just onto the frame. So I'm going to look at taking that off and out of the way, so that's not then fouling on anything. I'm going to look at also taking this out of the way as well, so we get both of them removed. Right, we should be able to take all that all that water housing out the way. So I'm just going to undo this hose up this end. Just tuck that there. Oh. To take that off. I thought I was going to, but I won't need to. That one's loose. That one's loose. So it's just a case of pushing this past the cable there. And there we go. Don't forget that Jubilee clip. Pop that back on there. Try not to get covered in coolant in the process. And then what I'm going to do is just take this one off here, leave that in because that tucks right through the frame, and I may not need to take that out of the way. So just pinch that together, give that a gentle twist, again making sure that you don't damage any of it, and then that's that bit, off and out of the way. Then again, we've got the coil that does the other two spark plugs, so I've just taken a photo of that just to make sure when I put it back together that I get the wiring on the right way round. So it's just going to be a similar process of just unclipping the wires on it and then undoing it. What I'll probably do is undo it first, then pull it up, and that gives me a bit more access to undo the wires rather than pulling on them too much. Just the two spacers have just dropped onto the ramp there. So as I said, just give them a wiggle, pull them off out the way, and then untuck those. One spacer there. There's the other one. The other one is there. So I'll just put these spacers with that out of the way. So there is a plug that just sits up behind the dash cluster, just a multi-plug that I've unclipped, and then that should allow us to pull the majority of this wiring out of the way. So I'm just feeding that between the frame and the fork leg. And there you have it. It was just one of those push fit or push clip connectors. So we can tuck or start to pull a lot of this through just gently, and then we can just sort of tuck this out of the way somewhere just so that we don't damage any of it, as I was saying earlier. I just really want to try and limit damaging anything unnecessarily. So we can look at taking the throttle cables off next, which, looking at that, one of them's the nut's fallen off the end of it. So yeah, we can look at taking these out and then taking that plastic breather pipe or crankcase vent pipe or housing out the way, because I don't really want to damage that as well either. So that can just pop that off out of the way. Like so. So what my plan is now is I've loosened off one of the throttle cables. I'm going to tuck the other one out the way as well. So these should just come off fairly easily now that they're nice and loose. So yeah, I just need to unclip those. I'm going to look at just down in here, we've got where the airbox meets the carbs. As you probably saw in the first video, I did have one of those out, so I'm going to look at loosening those off and then loosening some other bits and pieces off down there as well, just so that we can look at hopefully making that airbox a bit more movable, so that when we take the engine out we're not fouling on the airbox. So yeah, we'll crack on with that. So I've got one clamp just up here and then one tucked behind this mount. There's another one, so I may just take that mount out of the way just to give you a closer look at that. So yeah, we've got obviously one for each carb, so we've got 4 to take off or to loosen if we can gain access to them. So just get those nice and loose. So that's all of these loose and then all of these loose on this side. So as I say, we can look at just trying to gently pull those out. There are a couple of bolts here or Allen keys here that I can loosen. Let me just grab the camera. Just a couple here that I can loosen, which hopefully will make that airbox move a little bit. We'll try it and see what happens. Oh, look at that. Plenty of room. So I will just gently pop these out. Just again, so they're out the way. Gives us plenty of movement then. Less chance of damaging those. So they just come out. They just pull out, and then we've got a little locator so we know where they go back in, which is perfect. So that's all 4 of those out of the way now. And we got plenty of movement there for the airbox. So what I'm going to do now is just see if I can just gently move the gently remove the carbs. I'm just going to look at disconnecting the choke cable as well while we're there, but I might need to do that once we've got the carbs on the move. So we just gently pull those out there, and then the same on the other side. So that's great there now. Slightly looser. Obviously, as you know, we've still got the throttle cables connected, so I need to see if I can untuck them. So I just need to get a long screwdriver, I think, and what I'm going to do, just go behind the cable, move it round, and that should just flick the little end piece out. So we've got a nice long flat screwdriver. As I say, we should just be able to tuck this in here and hook that out. Saying that, I might just, rather than struggle, be able to wiggle them out like this and then get them out. That's one out. Now we just need to see if we can see the other one, get that one out. The other one's tucked under the bottom here. There we go, perfect. There's that one hiding. And that's the second one out the way. And we just got this choke cable here. I'm just going to gently bring these carbs out like that. As you can see, that's all of them there. And then the choke cable here, if I just flip that the other way up, and try not to pour fuel everywhere at the same time. Let me try and just spin that round gently. So I don't know if the camera's quite grabbing that, but basically the choke, then as you can see, by pulling that lever, you're pulling all of those across. So I'm just going to gently pull that through there, untuck that, and then if I loosen that off, there we go, just like that, and then just spin that round, unhook that, there we go, we got all the carbs off, so we can have a good look at those, give them a good clean. That'd be fantastic. What we will do while we're here as well is we just undo the front sprocket so we can take the chain off out the way. So just got that little bolt there, and then a nice big bolt here. So that's those two. We just work that off. We've got to loosen the back wheel because we've got to take that off at some point anyway. So I'm just going to loosen the chain adjusters. And basically that should, that should bring the wheel further forward. So that is as far forward as it goes. You can see we've got plenty of slack on there now though. Just take the tension off the chain, the bottom of the chain there, then you can hook that out. I will give this a good check as well. It does look like this is quite worn, so we may need to look at replacing that. But on initial inspection it does look as if the teeth are starting to throw themselves over. So yeah, can look at replacing that if we need to. So then it's just a case of tucking the chain over this and then out the way here somewhere. So what I'm doing this side now is we've got the starter motor cable that I've just taken off the starter. So I'm just gonna gently pull that through and just tuck that out the way over here. We know we've got the battery disconnected, so we haven't got any worry about that arcing out on anything. And then the engine earth, I'm going to tuck back the way that that starter motor cable's just come through, because that's attached to the engine still, and that's just going to come out with us when the engine comes out, I think. So we've then got the engine earth there, which I'll just tuck up and lay in amongst those other wires. So the good thing about this is we've got a couple of bits on the frame that actually allow us to take this section of the frame away, and then the engine comes down nicely, which I think is a really impressive design. It's really good to see something like that that makes it a lot easier to work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on taking these bolts out here and just this particular engine mount there, and then that should allow me to drop that section of frame away from the bike. And then the good thing is as well is that I can put my trolley jack in here and just lower it out the way nicely. So yeah, I'll crack on, get that bit out the way, and then we'll see what we're left with. Oh, I tell you what, that is such a good design. I'm impressed with that. Why can't they make them all like that? So much better. Right, we'll have a clear up, get that out the way, put these bolts out the way, and then we can look at the final bit to get the engine out. So what I've done is I've been round and loosened all of these bolts initially, just so that I can get them out a little bit easier. So what I am going to do is just grab the camera and show you the top bolt for the engine mounting, and then the little sort of brackets that hold the engine in place. So what I'll do is I'll show you that quickly now. In here we've got these engine brackets. So I've loosened this one off. What I'm going to do is take that right out and undo these so they just don't foul on the engine and make it any more difficult when it comes to taking that out. So we've got that one. We've got one which is just tucked behind there, which we're doing. We've got another one over there which was the same for this side, and then we've got another one on the other side that mirrors that, just mirrors that there. So yeah, we'll get cracking, undo these lot, and then hopefully we should be able to just let it down. What I have done is I've just drilled a little, used one of the spade bits out of my carpentry set, and just basically just drilled a little hole in there so that holds that block of wood in place for the minute. So yeah, we'll look at undoing the rest, and then hopefully we should be able to just lower that down, get the engine out the way there. I'm just going to pop the service manual into the computer and let that load up, or the laptop. And in the meantime, I've got some carb cleaner, and I've just got a toothbrush here as well. And what we're going to look at doing is just taking off some of these hoses out the way, and then giving the outside of the carburetors a real good clean. I can fire up the compressor as well, so that once we've cleaned them all off, we can blow them all off and just make sure that there's no dirt and that on the outside, because what we don't want is any dirt from the outside getting into the carbs themselves. So we get started with that and give these a good clean. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to unclip the fuel lines. We've got one in here and then one in this side, and they're just held together, or held on by some little pinch clips. So you just clamp those together, work them off. And we should be able to flip those back over and just wiggle these off. So that's those out of the way. Then we can look at taking these off just to separate and take that bar up out the way. I think what we will do though, before we do take this bar off that holds the carbs together, we just give them a clean on the outside, as I mentioned a moment ago, as they are, because I think that way it will just hold them nicely, and then when we have got them separated we can look at a bit more cleaning. So I think for the most part we've got the worst of it off, so what we'll look at doing now is just drying this all off. So I'll air blow all of this, all of the carburetor assembly off, and then we can look at starting to disassemble them from each other, and then that way we can then look at individually just going through each carburetor, giving it all a good clean inside, making sure that we haven't missed anything, which we will have done on the outside, but giving them both externally and internally a good clean, and then we can look at putting them back together. Okay, the manual's all loaded up now on the laptop as well, and I've got to the carburetor disassembly part. So it did recommend taking the fuel hoses off first, which we've done, taking off the air hoses, the throttle cables, which we disassembled off when we did the bike, and then it just recommends removing these screws here using an impact driver. So I'll loosen all of these off, and then we can pull that bar up out the way. So we just really take our time with this. Also got some padding underneath here as well, so I don't damage any of the base of the carburetors when I'm hitting the impact drive with the hammer here. Great, so they're now all loose, so we can undo those. Just pop those couple of tools out the way over here. I'm just going to remove this rail here, which in the manual they call the starter shaft, but yeah, I know it as sort of the piece that pulls the choke across. So the cable, as we saw in the previous video, attaches here, and then that pulls across to pull the choke on. So we're just going to look at unhooking this first, then we'll flip them over, and then we can look at getting the sort of main rail assembly off that holds the carbs together. So you just gently push these little plastic, well, there's one missing here, but these little plastic pieces, which hopefully you might be able to see, so these little plastic pieces here, just push the little feet in that stop them from coming out. There's just one like that and one like that, and just work them out. Oh, there's only two, so it may well be that there wasn't one missing, it's just there's two there. And then what you can do is just gently lever this up here, and that will pull that rail off there, and then we'll just tuck that out of the way. So if we flip them over, we've had plenty of fuel pour out of them, so I might have just get this rod off here, and then I'll have another clear up. We'll just pop that rail off, put that down there with the screws. Now that we've got this rail off along the top there, we now need to do the same for this one along the bottom here. So we'll go through, as we just did with the impact driver, get that off, and then hopefully that should allow each carb to separate. We can also take this off as well, because this is connected to this carburetor, whereas obviously the mounting point is over here on this one for the idle screw, I believe. So that's that bottom support bar off there. So now we can lay the carbs back down and hopefully pull them apart. So I'm just gently wiggling each one to release them. So that one out of there. And then that one out of there. What I'll do is I'll lay these other three to one side but in line as to where they were, and then we'll work on one at a time and then just put them back in place, so we've got no chance of then hopefully mixing them up, or should I say hopefully not mixing them up, because that's the I want to try and avoid that if possible. So I'll just carry on with a bit more cleaning on the outside of these now that I've separated them and I can get into the sides of each one of them. So yeah, I'll just give them a bit of a further clean. You can see plenty of dirt and muck coming off of those. So we can just pop the cleaning tray out of the way and then start to disassemble this one. Right, okay, so the first thing it recommends is to remove the top cover here. So we'll just do that. So we've just got 2 screws on the top there. So to remove those 2, and that reveals the top cover there, and we can pull all of this centre section out in one go. Oh, lovely. Plenty of dirt and grime in there. So again, we'll give that a bit of a clean as we go and just try and keep it as clean as possible as we go, really. We can also give all of this a good clean as well. There's dirt and bits and pieces on that. So yeah, I'll give this a quick clean and then we'll cut to the next bit, which it recommends is taking off the float chamber here. Again, using an impact driver just to release these 2 screws here. So we'll clean these bits and then we'll jump back onto that. So again, that just wants a good clean as well. It's just a float bowl assembly. It just gives you a bit of warning in the manual just to be careful when removing this assembly here. The float piece there, just as I imagine not to break any of this. So give that a clean. But for the minute, we'll just lay that down out the way. Once that's out the way, it then says about removing the starter plunger. So that's just held in, just in the back here, with 2 little plastic tags. You've got one there, which we maybe ought to get our fingers on, and then one here. There we go. And that's just starting to pop out now. So there's that piece. Pop that over there, out the way. Just held that up to the light. I can see through it, but there is a bit of dirt in there that I can see. Just need to grab a bit smaller screwdriver to fit in there. Okay, so I've managed to get the main jet out here, but unfortunately I can't get the pilot jet out of this particular carb. It doesn't want to seem to move, and the last thing I want to do is force it and damage it. So I'm going to try and clean this one as best as I can in situ. Hopefully that will work. It does then mention about taking the valve out here, but I don't need to do that, I don't think. I'm just going to give all of this a real good clean and just inspect it as per it recommends. Give all of this lot a real good clean. As you can see, it's full of dirt and grime. Blow all of these holes out and stuff like that with the air compressor. I won't bother filming that part because the air compressor isn't in the garage, so I'll end up doing that off camera, so that's not a problem. But yeah, I can give all of these a good clean. There are some tiny little holes as well in here that I can give all of those a good clear out as well, and just make sure that they're functioning properly. I'll get a tiny piece of wire and just poke them through, clear, and make sure they're okay. As I say, clear all this lot through, clean all of these other bits and pieces that we've got here. And we just also need to check as well the end of this piece here as well. We just need to make sure that there's no damage to the end there, which, looking at that, all looks in good order. So yeah, we'll just give this all a good clean through and make sure this is all working as it should. We've now given all of this a really good clean inside and out. We've blown through all of the areas where there's any holes through the pilot jet. We've given that a clean through the main jet here. We've also blown through all of these. There's some further holes in here as well. All of these ones, as I was saying, all round here, just giving it all a good clean and just made sure that all of these holes are clear and everything is as clean as it can be. So now it's just a case of just putting this one back together the same way that we took it apart. So we can just work our way through. We've given all of these components as well a bit of a clean in their own right. And we can just go through the process of just reassembling the carburetor. We'll just check the function of that. Bit of oil on these just to stop them from seizing in. So we're just pushing those plastic tags back through, just making sure that that seats properly, and that when we then pull that it doesn't come back out. We can see that they're sat right back in there. What we can do as well is just put a tiny bit of pressure on them just to make sure that they really are home. Then just check to make sure that this is sat up against here as it should be. So that's that one. And then we need to put the top section back together. So we just gently line all of that back up. Get all of this back into place. Just gently fold that seal round. Make sure that it's sat in the housing there that it needs to. Pop those two screws out as well. And just gently pop that on there. I'm just looking to make sure as well, before I do any of this up, that it's not pinching the seal itself isn't trying to pop out anywhere. Oh. Okay, so that's just checking here along the edge, just along here, just to make sure that I haven't pushed the seal out at all or caught it or damaged it from there. That all looks to be okay. So we've got all of those bits and pieces back in there, which is brilliant. Now I just need to look at just popping this back on. So that looks nice and clear, which is fine. Just popping this back on. And again, same with this here, just because I want to make sure that I don't forget to put any of this lot on at any point. So we'll just pop that back on there now. And that's that one all cleaned and ready to go. Unfortunately, as I showed you earlier, we weren't able to get that little pilot jet out. I have given it a clean as best as I can, but I didn't want to risk damaging it or anything like that. So we can put that lot, or put this one in the row with all the others. So that one can go back in place here. So then, as you can see, we've done that one on the far right. We just need to work our way through and do the rest of these. So yeah, I might put that on a time lapse, or if not, obviously you get the understanding of what we're trying to achieve. We want to make sure that all of these are clean. So yeah, I'll get going with the rest of those, get those all sorted, and then we can put the brackets back on that hold them all back in place, put the fuel lines back on, and then that we can put to one side, and that's all ready to rock and roll then. So that's these now all cleaned. It's just a case of bagging them up or putting them aside just so that we don't get any further dirt or anything in those, and then they can be put back on the bike. As I mentioned, I've just got pop the fuel lines back on here and here, so I'll just look at some of the footage that I'd previously taken when we took them apart, just to make sure that I get those the right way round and we don't get confused, and then when we go to put them back on the bike, find that we've mixed those up and they don't quite reach. So that's that all sorted. We've now got all the carbs all cleaned and finished, and we've just popped those in a bag there so we don't get any dirt or debris in those. So the next thing we're moving on to now is checking the engine valve clearances. So what I'm going to start by doing is taking this lower engine casing off here, which is held on with a few Allen key bolts, and then I'll take the cam cover casing off as well, which again is held on with a few Allen key bolts. I am going to take this pipe out of the way as well to just make access there that bit easier. So what I will do is I'll just grab the camera quickly, show you this engine casing, then we can pop those off, and then we can start looking at what we need to do to check those valve clearances. And if we need to make any adjustments, which is probably most likely, we can start doing those, and I can explain how you go about doing that. We've now removed the cover on the bottom here, so that just gives you sight of the pickup point there and where we're going to be turning over the crankshaft. And then if we come up the top here, we've now taken that cam cover off, and that's just revealing the cams, as you can see here. And then we've got the cam chain, the sprockets, cam chain tensioner is down here. So what I will do is I'll just run through the process and discuss it with you, and I can show you what I'm doing as well. So for those of you that haven't done it before, hopefully this will be beneficial. And for those of you that have, feel free to add any comments and any tips and tricks that you use to do this. So yeah, basically what we've got is, as you can see, we've got the cam lobes here, and then those cam lobes sit on top of each one of the engine valves. So we've got the inlet side here, and then we've got your exhaust side over here. And then these cam lobes sit on top of a hydraulic bucket, and that hydraulic bucket, as that lobe comes round, pushes down and opens the valve. So underneath this hydraulic bucket, you've actually got a tiny little shim, and basically they are sized and they go up in increments, looking at the manual of 0.5. So if you need a smaller clearance, you'll then need to use a larger shim, so that will bring the bucket further up and closer and bring that gap closed. And then obviously the other way round, for if you need a larger gap, you want a smaller shim to then bring that bucket down. So what I have done, just to make it easier for you to see, I've numbered the cylinders as well. I've just written it down here with a marker. So we've got cylinder 4, 3, 2 and 1. And then what we're going to be looking at doing is turning it over, as I mentioned. So we're going to turn it over using this nut here. And then for the first part, the pickup point, if you can just see that little T there, just off of there, we've got that little mark with a T. And the first point, looking at the manual, just shows that that needs to be at 12 o'clock, basically here. And then what that will do is that when we've got that in place, we then need to also check the two cutouts that we've got on the cam. I don't know if I can quite make that out, but there's two cutouts. As you can see, there's one there and then there's one there, and we just need to get those into the right position, and then we can check a certain number of the valve clearances using our feeler gauge. What we'll be doing is just going under in here and just checking. You want a slight bit of tension on them, but you certainly don't want to be forcing it in there, and at the same time you don't want it to be really loose. So you'll get, you know, with practice you'll get the feel for it. So I'll just bring you over to show you the computer here. So with the manual, as I was saying, we've got here in bold, you've got the inlet clearances and then you've got the exhaust clearances. So once we've got, this is for the first part, so once we've got it in time on the crank, and then the cams here are in time, we can then check all of these that are lettered as C. So those top two there, that one down there, that one down there, and then we rotate it, which is on the following page. We rotate it a certain number of times, and then we check the timing marks in the places that the manual then suggests, and then we look at checking, I'll just move my hand out of the way, we just then look at checking the ones that are written with the D marking there, and then we can look at potentially adjusting those. So what I also do with this is I just get myself a piece of paper and I just lay it out like this. So I just basically lay it out exactly as I've got the engine laid out there. So as you can see, I've got the inlet this side. So we've got the inlet this side. We've got the crank pickup where we're going to be turning the engine over, which, as we know, is over that side, not this side. So we've got that here. And then we've just got each individual valve. And then what I do is I just put the measurement next to each one. And then if I do need to make any adjustments, what I can do is almost use this as a bit of a template. I then can take the bike apart, or the engine apart, sorry, and then I can just lay those shims into those little circles where they are. And then if I need to make any adjustments, sometimes you can move one shim from one place to another. You know, if you've got a slightly tighter clearance over here and a larger one over here, you can mix them around to try and make that work. Or if not, and you need some more, you can then obviously add those. But it just also ensures as well that you haven't, if you play it right and you use this properly, you haven't left any shims out then. You can use this as a bit of a board to keep an eye on what you're doing. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll turn it over to that first point that it mentions on here, get those valve clearances checked and write those down, and then we can do the same for the other one and see if we need to make any adjustments. I'm not sure if I mentioned a moment ago, but I have also taken the spark plugs out. It did recommend that, and it just makes it easier when you're turning over the bike as well. The engine, sorry, I'll get it right in a minute. But basically, yeah, when you're turning the engine over, it just makes it easier because then you're not struggling with the compression of the engine because the air can be released where the spark plug isn't in there. So we want to bring this around. And you want to be turning it in the direction that the engine goes. So if it's going clockwise, you want to be turning it clockwise. Again, the manual does suggest that. And sorry if my arm's in the way, I'm just trying to steady the engine from moving. So I've now got that in place there, and I can see that this cam mark here is in line with the top of that, which is great. And then also I'm just going to go over and just check the manual and see where that suggests that one should be, which is, yeah, that's up on the I would say probably 1 o'clock mark. So then we can look at measuring those. It also does give you some reference points as well about where the sort of cam lobes should be facing when you come to do these checks. So I'm just reading through this. So it says the cam must be at position A or B in order to check the tappet clearance or to adjust tappet clearance. Clearance readings should not be taken with the cam in any other position than these two. The cam specification is for cold state, and then obviously it mentions about turning it over as we've just done. So we're looking at B or A, and as we can see, these two are at point B. These two, oh, computer's gone off again. These two are at point B. This one is at point A, and then this one is at point B as well. So yeah, we know that we can check 4 of those, and also we've got a rough idea of what's going on with those marks there. So yeah, I'll get on and I'll check those and write that down. So again, if you've not used one of these feeler gauges before, they've got a load of different thicknesses on them. And then I don't know if that quite makes it out, but you've got loads of different readings on, depending on the thickness of the gauge. And then obviously you can marry that up with what you need on here. So the exhaust, 0.2 to 0.3, so that's a 0.2 there. And then ideally what we want to try and do is get 0.25 on the exhaust, which is the middle. And then 0.15 on the inlet, which is in the middle. Some people obviously that know a bit more about this stuff than me will probably be able to suggest maybe going towards a more looser clearance, so when it gets hotter it's tighter, and vice versa. They might have a bit better suggestion. So we've got 0.15 there. So you just need to be mindful as well, because obviously we're going to be jumping around different cylinders just to make sure that you're using the right one for that. So what we'll do first is we're going to measure both exhaust. Actually, no, we'll measure both inlet first on those C ones. So we got our 0.15 here. So we'll see how that. I would say that that one was fairly good. I'm sorry if I get in the way. It's just a bit awkward to film at this angle. But that one, I would say, is probably more on the looser side. See that one? It's quite tight on 0.2, but 0.15 is quite loose. So I'm just going to stop the cam for a second, because I have got a feeler gauge which has got a few more increments in there, so I'm going to see if I can find that. Sorry if that camera's not quite perfectly square, I just thought maybe I'd put it up at this angle so you can get a bit better view of what I'm doing. So if we just go back to, I've grabbed this other feeler gauge, as you can see, that's got a lot more sort of shims in there that we can go through. I did cannibalise this one a bit previously. Unfortunately, when I was doing the R1, I couldn't get these gauges in there. So it was only a cheap set that I got. So I just trimmed down a bit on the edge, so it doesn't look the most impressive, but it does the same thing. We'll go back to where we were on the inlet. So we were measuring this one down here. So it was too tight for 0.2, but too loose for 0.15. So we've got 0.18 here. So it's too tight for 0.18 there. And too tight for 0.18 there. So we now got 1.5, 1.5 there, and 1.5 there. See if we can go a bit, yeah, so I'm going to put those at 0.15. So those two, in theory, are in spec. They're in the middle part of being in spec. So the next ones we can check are these two here. They're also a C. So yeah, 0.15 goes in there. 0.15 goes in there. We'll try 0.18 as well and see if that. Sorry if my head's in the way. Just trying to see what I'm doing. While not knocking the camera off the side. No, so that one's... Those two are pretty tight as well with a 0.18, so they don't go in, sorry. So we can mark those as 0.15 as well. And now we can come up to these two exhaust. So we're looking for somewhere between 0.2 and 0.3. So let's see if we can find something roughly in the middle of that to start with. So look at that, fancy a gold one. So 0.25 is the gold one that we've got here. So that fits in that one. And then, oh, it's quite pretty loose in that one. There, a little bit tighter on that one, but pretty loose on that one. So we'll go a bit higher. We've got 0.28 here. Yeah, so that's quite tight there. That won't go in there. So I'd say that one's probably 0.25 and that one's probably 0.28. 0.28. And then we can come along and measure this one. So while I've got the 0.28 out, I'll try it and see. No, won't go in there. Won't go in there. So back to our gold one. Yeah, that goes in quite easy. So does that one. I will just try at 0.28 again. Sorry, that was just another 0.25. I've got a gold and a normal one. So I was just checking to make sure there's no difference there. So yeah, that's not going in there. Oh, that one does, but with quite a bit of force. So I think those ones are both okay at 0.25. It may well be that these have been apart or this bike's been checked and adjusted, but obviously we don't know the history of it. So we've checked the ones we can, and I've just made a bit of an error. I've checked this one. So I checked this one here and that one there. And I shouldn't have checked that one because that's a D, not a C. I should have checked that one. So we'll check this one now, and then we can turn it over, and then we can check all of the ones that are marked for D. So what was that again? So 0.15 we're looking for. Unless I have made an error, and actually that is the one I checked, but just to be sure. May well be that I've just written it on the bit of paper wrong. So 0.15 fits in there. Does seem familiar that I've already checked it, but I've probably just written it down on that bit of paper wrong. As I say, it's best to just take your time and double check if there's anything you're unsure on. It's definitely worthwhile taking the time. This is quite a time-consuming job, especially if you have got to adjust. If you've got to take the bike to bits, and obviously if you've got to adjust these as well, it's quite time-consuming. So that's probably why it's quite expensive to get done at a garage or to get somebody else to do it. So yeah, they're 0.15 because the 1.8 doesn't fit. So it's probably just the fact I wrote it in the wrong place. Right. Okay, I'll turn it over to the next point and then we'll check the other ones. Looking for, which is basically 12 o'clock in line with the T and that line on the pickup point there. I'm just going to refer back to the manual and just make sure that these cams are where they should be, but looking at that, that should be good. It does look, maybe I'm wrong, but it just looked as if those Tipex marks lined up as if somebody'd been in here before, but that may well be the case anyway. So we've got this one here should be pointing along that way as it is, meeting in line with that, and then you've got this one here which is pointing down as well, so that's perfect. So if we go back to the page before, that means that we can now check that one and that one and this one here. So what we'll do, we'll start over here with the exhaust valves. So we can pick out our gold one again. That one and that one, so there. I'll go right the way across, why not? So they're all fairly loose with that 0.25. Let's see if we can get 0.28 on the scene. So that won't go in there. Goes in that one. Goes in that one. And does it fit in there? No. Yeah, but with quite a bit of fair bit of force, yeah. Right, let's go up to 0.3. If I can find it. Oh, there we go. 0.3. No, not in that one. Does in that one, but as you can see, I'm having to push pretty hard. No, doesn't in that one. Doesn't in that one either. So I'd probably say 0.28, 0.28, 0.28 and 0.25. That one and that one, which are inlet. So we go back down to 0.15 and check those. .15 goes in there. 0.18 doesn't. No, 0.18 doesn't. So I'll go for 0.15 on those. As I say, it may well be that the that it's probably not. It might be 0.16 or 17, but I've only got the I mixed that up again. I went for that one rather than this one. So that's 0.18. That one's 0.18. And then let's check this one. 0.15. As I was saying just before I made that little mix up there, I've only got increments, so as you can see, 0.15, 0.18, 0.2. It may well be that actually it's 0.16 or 17, but we're within spec. That's the main thing. Yeah, so 0.15 there and 1.8 there, and then we're just going to check this final one over here. So 0.15 there. 0.15 there. Go up a little bit. That's grabbing there, so that one won't go through. Yeah, so I'm going to put those at 0.15 as well. If I now hold that up there, you can see, well, hopefully you can see, we've got all the measurements across all of them. As I say, I did make a bit of a mix up with these two cylinders, twice in fact. But yeah, we've crossed those out and we've got all of the sizing here, all the measurements here. So if we then refer back to the manual, let me just grab the camera. So if we then just look at the manual, as you can see, our measurements are 0.10 to 0.20 on the inlet, and then the exhaust is 0.2 to 0.3. And then we've got, which is upside down, we've then got, as you can see, the measurements that we're working with there. So we're well within, we're within spec, aren't we? So if we look there, we're at a reasonable midpoint across them. I mean, we could, if we really wanted, we could look to change some of them, but I don't think it's going to be essential to change some of those. As I say, we are within spec. If we were getting towards the real upper limits, are sort of the, if we were on 0.3, the upper side of it, or we were right down by 0.1, or we were up by 0.2 on the inlet. So as I say, if we were on those higher points or the lower points on each end of that scale on either one, I would be looking to change those out. And if there were any that were sort of obvious, as I mentioned earlier, I would be looking to swap maybe one for the other. So yeah, I think actually that's gone pretty well. It looks to be as if they are within spec. As I say, it may well be that these have been checked before and adjusted. On the R1 that I did, I'll leave a link in the description for that if you're interested in watching the build on that one. But on the R1 that I did, we ended up changing the vast majority of the shims in there. So yeah, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you manage to do it and sometimes you don't. So I haven't done that many of these, so maybe it's one of those things where, you know, more often than not you're having to take them apart and change those shims out, or, you know, maybe you're a bit more on the lucky side and you don't have to change them. So what we could do is clean all these mating faces up and the same down on the side there, get those bits back on, and then the next bit I'm going to look at doing is just bunging up any holes and bits and pieces, and then starting to give this a bit of a clean with some engine degreaser and stuff, just trying to make it look a bit more presentable before I do any further checks. So yeah, I'll box all this back up and then we'll go from there. I've now popped the cam cover back on and just put a little bit of sealant on these, what they call like half moon parts of the gasket. and then the same on the other side here. That's just what it recommends in the manual and what I could see had been previously done. And then also we've just put this cover back on, and we have popped a set of fresh spark plugs in there as well, so that's great. We did get a whole service kit, so I will be going through changing the oil filter, obviously putting the oil in when it's ready. We've also got an air filter as well, and we got a set of plugs for it, so we just pop those in there now just to ensure that nothing falls down into the bores. So as I mentioned a moment ago, what I'm going to look at doing is giving this all a really good clean next, and then I'll jump back onto the manual, have a look at the periodic maintenance part of the manual and just see if there's any other further checks it wants me to carry out before we look at putting it back into the bike. I think I might be here a while. So I'm just going to grab myself a gasket scraping tool that I've got and a tiny little pry bar, and I'm basically just going to get the worst of it off before I start wasting the engine degreaser and getting the finer stuff off. I've got plenty of brake cleaner as well. So yeah, I'll just work my way through getting all of this grease and grime off of it. And then when we get to, as I say, some of the areas that we need to clean, which are near any ports or like the inlet ports and stuff, then we can put some tissue paper or something in there and get those all cleaned in and around that area. I've just taken these few bits off the engine here. So we've got the starter motor, generator and the water pump, and that's just given me access all into around here and then down in around here, so I can get it a bit cleaner. I can also clean these up as well. I'm not looking to get it absolutely immaculate, I just want to get it degreased, fairly clean and fairly tidy. So yeah, I'm just going to continue on using the degreaser, using a brush to just agitate it all, bit of brake cleaner and stuff like that. And I'm also going around with an air compressor and just blowing any of the dirt out of any of the holes and just trying to get it all as sort of clean as I can really before we put it back in the bike. So now, as I mentioned, we're just working our way through having a look at the periodic maintenance chart and just making sure basically we've got all of those checks and bits and pieces that it recommends in place. So the exhaust pipe bolts, as we know, we're going to be doing those back up when we put the engine back in. We've got a new air cleaner, air filter, so we'll put that in. The tappet clearance we've done, the spark plugs we've done, engine oil and filter we'll be doing. The fuel line, we can inspect that and potentially replace it if we need to. The fuel cop filter, we did that when we basically rebuilt the fuel tap. Engine idling and the throttle plate, again, we'll be doing that when we put it back together. I'm not going to replace the clutch hose, but things like the fluid, we'll replace and refresh that. The same with the radiator hoses, and we'll just carry out any of the other inspections that it recommends there. Tyres we're going to look to replace because they're old and flat. Steering we can check, front forks, rear suspension. We'll go through and check, tighten all the chassis nuts and bolts when we put the vehicle, or when we put the bike back together, sorry. So yeah, that gives you a good idea of what we've got and the checks that it basically suggests. And then along the top there, you've just got the kilometres and mile intervals that it suggests. And also, as you can see throughout here as well, it's got the sort of annual or the yearly replacement that it recommends. So things like the brake hoses every 4 years and stuff like that. But I'll check and inspect those. As I mentioned in the beginning of this series, I'm not looking to go too mad with the bike. I just want to make sure that it's usable, you know, everything's within tolerance, and yeah, and everything works and it's fairly clean. Just before we look at putting the engine in, I thought I'd just quickly show you round. So we've given all of this lot a good clean as best as possible with the tools and bits and pieces we've got. So just got rid of a load of that chain grease and dirt and grime all up in the frame there and all round by the stand. And we've given all of the rest of this area a good clean. So it's just a case now of tucking bits and pieces out the way so we can get the engine in. I've also taken the bolts out that I'd left in the frame so I know where they went. I've given those a good grease up already. So then it's just a case of when we come to put the engine back in, I've got the bolts easily accessible that I can pop in and hold the engine in place before I get it fully in place and all set and done. And then what we can look at doing is obviously working our way back through, putting it all back together. So I'm going to tuck these cables out of the way quickly now, and then we can move on to getting the jack in place down here, and then seeing if we can pop that engine in and in place. I've also got the other part of the frame here. As you saw when we took the engine out, this handy piece just detaches off. So I've just given this a bit of a clean up and also got the bolts for that. So I'm just going to put that hopefully out the way here, but no doubt this will end up in the way. So I'm just going to pop this here so that if I need to, I can grab it. Actually, I might pop it around the other side. So if I need that, it's in fairly easy reach. And then I'm just going to do what I've done here and pre-grease all of the bolts. So if I need to grab one, then I've got the ability to grab one quickly there and then just pop that in the hole, and that's all greased and sorted. I'm sorry if the camera angle's not ideal. It's just a bit awkward of having the camera sort of over that side of the bike and obviously trying to bring the engine round to here. So hopefully I'm getting that a good shot of that, or as best as possible. Just checking to make sure that we're not going to crush or damage any wiring as we move it around. Just making sure I'm not catching on anything as I go. So the front of the engine needs to come forward a bit, and then the back needs to sort of just twist up a bit like so. What I'm going to do now is just put a couple of these bolts in here just to hold the engine from deciding to, if it does slip or slip on the jack at all, just hopefully holds it in place. But I don't know that I can quite get to that. I've got one of the bottom bolts in here. I'm just gently trying to work it in there. So I've managed to get the main bottom bolt most of the way through here, but what I'm not going to do at the moment is go too mad with that, because I need to get this large washer between the frame and the engine. So what I'm going to do is just loosely put some of these other mounting points on and in place. As I say, just loosely, so that I can then put it all in and get it all torqued up in one go. So I'm just going to work my way through now, pop these on. Now that that's a bit more in place, I'm just able to get a bit better alignment on the part of the frame here that detaches. So again, I can just start to get that in place, just loosely putting the bolts in there, and then just getting it all nice and lined up before we go ahead and do it right up and torque it all down. But that went a lot easier than expected. I thought there might have been a few choice words, but we're all okay. Right, again, just pop 2 bolts through there. Need to move the engine over a little bit. See if we can. I think it's got to come down. Sorry if my head's in the way, guys. Just trying to see what I'm doing. Just get one of these little tools to help me line the holes up and get one in. We might stand half a chance. Perfect, there we go. One in there. Give that one a bit of a wiggle, I think. Pop those on there. And then now that that one's in and through, I can get that one onto that little engine / frame mount. Just going to start winding some of these down by hand. So just giving you a closer look as to what we've been up to. So we've managed to put this little mount on here, get all the bolts in, and we've just wound them down by hand, and then we're going to torque all of these up in a minute. I'm just going to give, obviously, where my hands have been on the frame and bits and pieces, all of that stuff are clean as well. So we've done this one up here. We've got one up the top, just in here as well. And then these Allen key bolts, which you access from the other side. Got that one down there, which has got a threaded washer on the back, which is a bit of a fiddle to just tuck up in behind here. and then that bolt goes through the engine and into there. Got another one there, and then where the frame splits there, we've got one there, a couple there, same on the other side. And if I just take you round, as I mentioned, it's just sort of a mirror image on the other side really. So these ones, that one up here, the larger one down the bottom, which obviously you can see from the other side. And then yeah, there's those Allen key ones as well. So I'll get all of those torqued up, give it a good clean off, and then we can move on to the next bit. Firstly, I'm going to torque up the two larger bolts at the back here. I'm going to do that on the nut side. So what I'm going to do is just hold my hand on the other side. Yeah, that's spinning. So I'll grab a spanner for that. Both of these two are the same. Now I'm going to go around and do these ones. I'm not going to be able to get to the nuts to torque those, so I'm going to torque the bolt, but I will add 10% onto there. So just adjust that up slightly. The same the other side. And then I need to go round, do these smaller lower ones, and the same for the where they attach to the frame here. Then I can look at torquing all the frame bolts up as well. Just got the final engine mount ones to do, which are just up the back here. Those Allen key ones that we mentioned, because we've done all the others. Then we'll turn our attention to the frame. The engine's now in the bike. We've managed to get all of the frame bolts in and get those torqued up, and I've double checked them. And then the same again with all of the engine mount bolts and the bolts that mount the engine to the frame. So I've just checked all of those and double checked them again, just to make sure that I haven't missed any. I'm really pleased that the engine's now in. That went a lot smoother than I thought it would go. And even better, I've still got all my fingers and I haven't hurt any of them. So now what I'm going to do is carry on building all of the bits and pieces up on the engine, starting to look at getting some of this wiring laid out and where that needs to go, plugging it all in and just working bit by bit to carry on and get this up to where it needs to be. I'm going to start by just laying this loom back out where it came from. Even if I have to come back and unplug some of these and go back again, I'm not too worried at this point. It's just getting the basic sort of layout of the wiring. These ones here. We're just working our way through it nicely, getting all the wiring tucked up through here, getting all the plugs in place. As I mentioned just a moment ago, if I need to unplug it and reroute it, that's not a problem, I can. I'm linking in with the manual as well, just to make sure that I get it roughly where it needs to be. So I've just popped the starter motor wiring on, the power down to that from the battery, and then we'll just pop the cover over. Just got a rubber cover, pop that over there. And then yeah, we're just using the clips that we had left in place just to tidy that wiring up. Make sure that that's routed nicely down here, so that we're not going to catch it on the sprocket at all. It has got a guard, which isn't a problem. So yeah, we just want to make sure that's nice and neat. And again, with all the wiring coming up over here, because once we've got the carbs in, it'd be really difficult if we then need to move any of that wiring around or unplug it, whatever that may be. I'd rather just try and get it right now than end up having to struggle a bit later. So yeah, we'll keep going, keep plugging all of this stuff in and just keep building it up. So we've just got the oil cooler lines going on at the bottom of the engine here. So if I tuck that up out of the way, just doing these two up. So I'm going to run them down with the electric bit. Oh, wrong way. And then we're just going to torque these up. I've just put some grease, some spray grease down into the threads here, and then I am going to grease the bolts as well before, or the studs and then the nuts before I put them in. And I'm also going to replace these copper exhaust washers as well that just sit in here. So I'll look at doing those. just cleaned up the exhaust manifold ends here. Just dressed them up with a bit of sandpaper just to take any of the rough bits off, just so that we get a nice seal on here. They're not studs and nuts on this. They're actually Allen key bolts. So what I'm going to do is just lift the exhaust up into place, and then hopefully we should be able to bolt that all in. Trying to do these up nice and evenly. So I'll grab the torque settings for those, get those torqued up. I won't be able to torque up the ones that I need to access with the Allen key, but we can do them up, get a feel for it, do those up. So that one's on, then we've done all the manifold ones, so the exhaust is on. So there I was, getting a bit ahead of myself there, but it's nothing that we can't fix. So I've just got myself a box of the little connectors that basically just put a bit of heat through. They've got solder in them. They've got solder in the centre, waterproof connection. Just slide that on. Then I've got a little gas soldering iron. But what we can do is we can pop that on in place like that. Same on the other end. And the wires meet in the middle there, and then we can just heat that up gently with the soldering iron. But just tucked down in there is the wiring repair. So we just need to tuck that up out of the way. Make sure that don't touch the exhaust. I've just changed the angle of the camera there, and I'm just going to do some bits at the top here. So I've got one of the coil packs which sits down on the front of the frame, and then there's another one that sits on the back there. So this one just going to pop in place. That's those done up, and then these HT leads, as I mentioned, they're all labelled. So I've popped that coil on up there. I just need to work out, you've got two little spade connectors that go on. So I need to have a quick look on my phone, because I do remember taking a photo of those, because I thought I'd get to this point and wonder which one went where. So I need to do that in a minute. That's not a problem, but what I'm probably going to do is put this one on as well, which is the one that comes up this end. So it may well make sense. As I say, I might need to take it back off out of the way to move stuff around, but I've only got two 10mm bolts holding it on, and it's really easy and accessible anyway. So a torque wrench. Pop those coils on, or should I say the wires to the coil. We've just got the coolant filler sort of housing here, which I'm going to pop that on as well, get that nice and tucked in, get that all connected up as well. That would be great to get that in. A couple of little 10mm bolts that hold the little housing on. Just got one of the coolant hoses off of that housing there. It just comes onto this rail along the top of the engine here. So I'm just going to take the opportunity now to do that up, so I don't forget. Perfect, that's all in place. Believe that this little breather box lives on here. Yeah, that looks to make sense. So it's just a case now of working out these ones. So we've got the crankcase breather coming up into the airbox, which is fine, and then we've got this one. I seem to be missing a pipe off the end there, so I don't know if I've misplaced that, so I'm going to go and have a look, see if I can find it. So I've had a quick look around the garage and I can't seem to find the pipe. I've probably hidden it somewhere, so I'm going to take this one back off for the minute, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up in the air, and then we can do some more up there, and then come back to this in a minute when hopefully we've used some more bits and pieces off the bike. It may well come to light that we find the missing piece here. So yeah, we'll come back up and do a bit more on the cooling side of stuff. So I've just picked up a few more of the coolant hoses. So we've got a large coolant hose there, we've got the one on the other side, and then we've got one intermediate hose which just goes into the front here. So we're just going to work our way through putting all of these on. Those ones. I'm just tucking the wiring through here for the cooling fan. We've now got all the pipe work on there. So we've just done this coolant hose here, those couple of bolts and the two clips up here. This one down here, we just got to do the clip up, but we've done it up to here. That's all in. There's a couple of bolts just tucked up right up the top there, which we've done up to hold the radiator in. We still need to put the bottom brace in because that holds the oil cooler and the bottom of the rad. Then if we pop round the other side, we've just popped that top hose on, and then the wiring for the fan just comes up through into here, and it's that wire just in there. So we've just plugged it in just there. So what I'm going to do next is finish off tidying up and tightening up those coolant hoses, and then we can look at getting that oil cooler on and in place. I will whip the oil filter off and just replace it with this new high flow one that we've got. That's what's on the bike anyway. You just match these up, same part number, perfect. Just put a bit of oil around this seal. Right, that's all of that in there. That's all in place, nice. So as you can see, we've now got the oil cooler all in place. We just need to look at putting that pipe work on at the top either side. But I am going to replace those O-rings, so I'm going to grab, that one's just falling off there. Oh, but I'm going to grab myself a couple of those and just pop them in place and then do all of those back up. Time to pop some fluid in. Right, so that's topped up there for the minute. Now just doing our engine oil, so we've measured out. We're making really good progress with the bike, and I'm really pleased with where we've got to so far. We haven't hit any real sort of stumbling blocks or anything that's really sort of caught us off guard, so that's great. I've just been using this XCP cleaner. I thought I'd give this a go. I just picked it up from Halfords just to see how I get on with it. So I've just been cleaning these little rubber sort of trumpets that go between the airbox and the carburetors. So they just had some general dirt and grime on them, so I thought I'd give this a go and see how I get on with that. I've got the carbs all bagged up here. As I showed you in the beginning of the video, I'd bought a dyno jet kit for it. So I've been ahead, or gone ahead should I say, fitted that dyno jet kit in there. I've also replaced some of the rubber seals and bits and pieces in there as well, giving them another good clean while we were there. Why not? So now I'm just in the process of popping these in, and then we're going to look at hopefully getting the carbs in there, and that's another good job done, and we'll be that bit closer to getting it started. So I'm just going to pop these back on, these Jubilee style clips, and then with these just push in, and they've got a little locator, which is fantastic. Gives you an idea of where they're meant to go. So just give them a bit of a wiggle. Might take that off actually, might make life a bit easier. I'll put them on at the end. So just want to make sure that they're seated in all the way around. Push that one in, and then it's just the same, working your way through them. I've remembered where my mystery hose goes, on there and on there. Just come down a bit here so I can hold the airbox out of the way, as well as just gently pulling the carbs through. So at the moment I'm just going to tuck this choke cable in. So we just tuck all that back in, get the spring in place, make sure the cable's in there properly. So that's that all in place there now. We need to do the throttle cables eventually. That's not a problem, we can do them. So I come back down for those again. Might just pop them in place first. If I pulled the other side out. It's going to be fun. Right, okay. I've got a feeling I'll be pulling these back out in a second anyway. So as I mentioned, we got the fuel lines there. We've then got the other, I think the breather line for the tank as well. 2 throttle cables, and then the breathers there as well. So that one into there. And that one into there. Right, just got to work out how I'm going to hook them on. So I'm just getting the little locking nuts on first. Just got to work out where on earth that other one is. Because I can't see it from here. After a bit of careful manoeuvring, I just slid the carbs over ever so slightly and just managed to use them at an angle to get that second throttle cable on, and I've just checked that they are turning, or that the throttle's turning and it's doing what it should. So I just now need to just nip those up, those 2 little nuts, the little securing ones that hold those throttle cables in place. And then once I've done that, we can move on and look at putting the rest of it back together. I use one of the short stubby spanners just to get in there. Took me quite a while. Next time I will be taking the advice in the comments and taking it off from the throttle tube side rather than the carb side, and just feeding it through the frame. I'm going to try and work these carbs in. There we go. We are in. Ha-ha. Bit overkill for this one, but the inner one, it'll be much easier to get with this longer screwdriver. So here we have our mystery hose from before. So this just goes down onto the carbs. It just tucks onto a little brass fitting in here. Now going to look at putting, there's a couple of Airbox bolts, one here and one the other side. And the previous ones, I don't know if you can quite see there, but basically they are some cut down, modified ones. And and I'm not really sure why. So I've got two new ones here. I was just going to pop in, make them look a little bit neater. Going to pop a couple of nice little neat trim clips in there. One there and then one the other side, just to tidy those up. Just giving the air filter lid clean inside and out, so we can pop the air filter element in there. Tuck that in there. Have given this a good wash and wipe down on the inside. Obviously I will look to eventually I will look to clean the outside of it, but for the moment I just wanted to give the inside of it a real good clean, because I'm not going to be able to access that once it's back on the bike. Just plug in the brake light in there. We can also access to top up the coolant as well there, which is good, because we will need to top that up, make sure that that's full. So what I'm going to do now is put the rear grab rail on, and then these couple of bolts or screws here probably, and then that will hold this in place nicely. So we've now taken the wheels off and we've put the bike on two paddock stands. As you can see with the back wheel here, I mentioned that flat spot. That wheel actually stays up like that on its own. So what we're going to do now is just take those down to the tyre shop and get them swapped over. So I'm now going to turn my attention to cleaning the fuel tank, and basically what I've started by doing is I've taken out the plug here, I've taken off the pipe that was on here, and I've also taken out the valve, and I've just put a bit of parcel tape under the bottom there, followed by some masking tape, just so that I'm going to put these back on, but when we put the solution in, I just don't want it to come back out of there, and I don't want to clog up that freshly clean valve that we've done in a previous episode. So if I flip the tank over, we've also managed to get the fuel cap out. So what I did with this was all seized in, so I undid the 4 bolts here, and then that allowed me to lift this section up a little bit. And then what I used was actually a carpentry biscuit, and I just popped that down in the side there, and then that allowed me to put a screwdriver in between the two without marking any of the tank. There is some oil and bits and pieces on there, but without marking any of the tank, I was able to get that off. Unfortunately, it did end up breaking a little piece on the inside here, so I've just gone ahead and got myself another fuel cap. So we've got a nice new one, so that we know that we're not going to have any issues there. So what we're going to concentrate on doing now is just reading the instructions. So this is the stuff that I've gone for here. This is just some stuff I got off the internet, and what I'll do is I'll leave a link in the description, and then we've just got the basic guidance here. So we're just going to run through, give that a read, and then just make sure that we're following all of that as we should, and we can give this a real good clean rinse out, and then following that we've got some sealer that goes in there afterwards. So what we're going to do now is get through the instructions, get this solution mixed up with the water that it recommends, and then we can leave that to sit, to soak and do what it needs to. It's now been a couple of days since we were last working on the bike, and we've managed to just drain out the first part of the cleaning solution on the tank here. What we've then gone ahead and done is just rinsed it all out with water. I'm then going to go ahead and put in the second part, which is the sealer. It just recommends pouring that in as it comes in the bottle, swilling that round within the tank, and then rinsing that out and just leaving it to dry. We also managed to get the tyres fitted, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is pop the wheels back on, chuck that front sprocket back on there, That'll allow me to put all the chain on and tension that up, get all the wheels tight, and then at least worst case scenario, if we can't get it started, it's a damn sight easier to push it round in and out the garage. Just going to go ahead and tighten the brake calipers. So I'm just torquing up the axle shaft now, and then the two little pinch bolts, and then that'll be the front wheel all on and sorted with the new tyre. Then we can move on to the back. So now I've got the wheel on, I'm just going to go ahead and measure the chain slack, get that all tensioned, all adjusted nicely, and then just make sure that that wheel is true, and then we can go ahead and tighten the wheel down. So I'm just going ahead there, pumping the pads out, making sure they're all right, and then I'm just making sure that the wheel's running true. I've got both sides of the adjusters marked up in the same location. We've now tightened the wheel, so all the wheels on and all the tyres are now done. I've now gone ahead and popped all of the tank on. We put a new filter in the tank valve. We've put a new fuel cap on there as well, tightened that all in and got that sorted. I've popped the seat on, and I've just put the two mounting screws or bolts in the back of the fuel tank here, and I've only done them up loosely because what I don't want to do is do them up too tight, because in a moment I'm going to be taking the tank back off when I look to balance the carbs. So I've managed to find the keys as well, which is great. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over without any fuel in it and see how that goes, and then hopefully we can then look at adding some fuel and go for the first start. Ignition on, and pull in the clutch. So that's great, it seems to turn over nicely. We're just going to carry on doing that a few more times, get the oil pumped around the engine, pop a bit of fuel in, and we go for the first start. I just want to double check as well, just to make sure that there's nothing in the way, that when it does finally start, gets caught up in anything. So I'm just going to double check that as well. Okay, so we've put the fuel in now. So here goes nothing, fingers crossed, it starts. checking I haven't got any fuel pouring out the bottom. No, we don't seem to. Come on, come on. Oh, it's so close. Oh, nearly. Yes, get in there. Yes, check that out. Oh, that is brilliant. So I've just got the throttle slightly on. I'm just letting it all cycle round a bit. If you can hear me, that is. Oh, that is absolutely brilliant. Oh, I can't believe that. Brilliant. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I might run it for a little bit longer and then take the choke off and see if it idles nicely. I know that it won't idle particularly well because, as we said numerous times in the video, we've got to balance the carbs. What I am going to do is I'm going to take that over to my friend's workshop to do that, because I don't really want to upset the neighbours too much having this thing running while trying to do all those bits. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is turn the camera off, leave it running for a little bit longer, maybe pop the door open a bit, and then we'll cut back in when we're over at my friend's workshop, and then we can get this dialed in, hopefully get those carbs set up right, and then maybe take it for its first little drive up and down the lane there. So I'm now over at my friend's workshop. I'm sorry about the lighting. I was going to try and do this outside, but every time I try and do some filming or get set up outside, it decides to rain. So what I've done this morning is I've gone ahead and I've taken all the fairing off of the back here. I'm going to check the level here for the coolant and also the coolant at the front here. And then once I've sorted all of that out, I've gone ahead and I've popped the vacuum gauges on here, which is why I've lifted the tank up slightly to give me access. I'm going to be looking at getting one of those detachable tanks, or like the fuel socks that you can use. So if anybody's got a recommendation for one of those, please pop it in the comments, because I need to get one of those, so when I'm doing this sort of thing, I'm not struggling with the tank off the bike. I can use one of those additional fuel tanks. So yeah, I've now warmed the bike up after checking all the levels, left it running for quite a while. I've adjusted the idle down to what the manufacturer recommends, and then what I'm going to be doing from here on is just adjusting the carbs so that I get a nice balance across all four. So I'm going to go ahead and crack on with that. We've managed to now get all of the carbs balanced. It could be quite a fiddly job and quite time consuming, so I didn't go through and film that bit, but we've got great throttle response. We've adjusted all of those. We've now got the idle running nicely as well. So as you've just seen in the video, I've just popped up the lane and back just to make sure that I've got good throttle response. I'm not getting any low spots there at all at a lower speed. Obviously, I'll look to road test it properly in the future once we get the MOT on there, but I just wanted to make sure for where we are now, we all seem to be okay. Also ran the bike right up to temperature, the cooling fan cut in, which is brilliant. Everything's circulating as it should do. We don't seem to have any fluid or oil leaks or anything like that. So I think the next thing we're going to do is just start looking to put all of these panels back on, giving those a clean on the inside as we go, and then I'll give the final wash off of the bike once it's all back together, and then we can do some slow-mo shots afterwards and you can have a real good look at what we've ended up with. Just working my way through putting all the panels back on, and as luck would have it, I found these ones over in the corner and I've accidentally forgot to put these back on. So these just sit up under the tank there. So I've just loosened the tank off. I'm going to loosen this bit back off and pop those back in. So that's it, guys. We've finally got to a point where we can get out and enjoy this GSXR. I've got one final thing left to do, which is get it through the MOT, but I don't see that being too much of an issue. I have got it booked in, but we are in a bit of a queue. As you can see, the sun's starting to pop out and everybody's doing the same thing. So we've just got to wait our turn, and then hopefully we can get out there and put a few miles on it. I'm not too worried about this thing being immaculate. I want it to be something that I can get on, ride and enjoy and not be too worried about it. So I really hope that you've enjoyed watching this series and this video, and if you have, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and you'll have to wait and see what we've got in store on the next one.